has its own government, but they're under some sort of supranational, almost a global governance called the EU itself, based in Brussels, that is not accountable, does not have the democratic legitimacy, but has great power. And the head of security for the European Union is this woman, Federica Mogherini. She's from Italy, as her name suggests. And she made a bizarre announcement the other day, saying that radical political Islam is a legitimate political force within Europe. So this is the woman who is purportedly charged with defending Europe's security. And she's welcoming political Islam. Let me quote to you a little bit from her various statements. This is what she said a few days after jihadis killed dozens of people just across the Mediterranean in Tunisia. She said, quote, "Islam holds a place in our Western societies. Islam belongs in Europe. With the European project, we express a desire for diversity." Now, that all sounds innocuous enough, but she goes on. She says, "Islam is a victim itself. Diversity is the core feature of our European history and is our strength. For this reason, I am not afraid to say that political Islam should be a part of the picture." It's fine to say freedom of religion and diversity. I get that. But for political Islam, that is not a separation of church and state.
Okay, so what do you think of that, folks? Political Islam is acceptable. That was an interesting report in regards to the European Union. Let me turn down the volume a little bit. They're out there. You got this head of the EU there, of security policy, Federica Mogherini. And like he said, she caused quite a stir out there, saying that political Islam should be part of the European system, the greater system. And she was responding to the brutal attacks, brutal Islamist terror attacks on Tunisia, Kuwait, and France just last month. And she dismissed any idea that it was a clash of civilizations. Basically stating that Islam belongs in Europe, that Europe has a history of culture and diversity in food, and she's not afraid to say that political Islam should be in the greater scheme of things, the greater picture. Religion plays a role in politics, she says, which is it conflicts with what we say here in the United States, that religion does not belong in politics. And you got to look at it this way, folks. When you're out there and you're promoting this political Islam, and that it be part of your politics, no separation of church and state, that good stuff. What you got to look is at what is, like this article said, the zenith of political Islam, and that's Sharia law. It's a whole legal system that's derived from the teachings of Islam. She's basically promoting that you go with this system that represents one of the most repressive forces on the planet, subjugating women and allowing extrajudicial murders such as stonings and beheadings. In Saudi Arabia, I think they're almost at 200 beheadings so far this year. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the woman of ISIS in a little bit, which is going to further elaborate on this whole concept of Islam with the ISIS train of thought. The Saudi Arabian government, is that how we want to manage our political system, be it Europe, be it in the United States? They went out there, and the Muslims, one of their famous lines, and I see it here in this report, is, "We will conquer your Rome." Their whole goal is to conquer and make everybody follow these Sharia laws. So her comments will do very little to dispel many of the concerns that a lot of leaders have out there about the threats that are posed by ISIS, how to stop ISIS, how to combat the ideology. That's right, combat the ideology. Your goal shouldn't be to pull that ideology into the current political system and work around it and integrate it into our system. So I'm not sure exactly what this lady was thinking. And before I get into the whole ISIS one that I wanted to cover, this is Francesco Abbruzzino. This is the Uncensored Report, and it is a one-man operation. I do everything from the technical aspects, research, hosting, running the website, the social media, and all that stuff. You can find all the national news if you go to theuncensoredreport.com or thescoopnationalnews.com. There's a variety of stories on there. The Scoop National News has a lot of the stuff that I put on the Uncensored Report, but it goes a little bit further, and I do stuff like failed videos, weird news, and more of a news type channel with a lot of information flowing out there. So go ahead and visit it by all means. All right, we got a lot of stuff to cover today. I figure first we'll start with the local news. So let me go ahead and pull up that website real quick. There we go. And come back and get you guys on a split screen. All right, let's turn up the volume some so you guys can still hear me good. Some of the news out there is they're talking about the tensions with Russia and how they could prompt NATO strategy and to rethink their strategy, especially if NATO pulls into Greece. They decide to come in and support Greece after that no vote, which we're going to elaborate a little bit further on during this show. Growing evidence that charter schools are failing. You know, I don't know if I buy into that. Both daughters went to a charter school. They were very successful. I think they progressed a lot further than they would have at the public schools. So I'm not sure I'm buying into that whole thing. I started to read the article. I'd never finished it. Worrying about our retirement. I'm going to focus a little bit on that because I think there's a lot of issues or concerns out there that many Americans aren't aware of. Detroit, how they were coming back from the brink, but they left most of the Detroiters behind, which is a sad story there. Puerto Rico, we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. Wilderness Corridor, Agenda 21. It's something that if you're new to the show, I'm not sure if you are aware of Agenda 21, which is basically moving the population centers to the urban areas so they're more controlled versus the rural settings. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Wilderness Corridor. The U.S. bases in Somalia, that's something we're going to touch on today, something that many people weren't aware of. There's that lovely Newland. God, this lady is a character. We're going to talk about her and her involvement not only possibly in Greece, but her involvement in that whole Ukrainian coup that has caused all this reignition of the Cold War with Russia. Possible alien life on this comet. Flora Lander detects promising features on Comet 67P. More about the Greece. Obviously, Greece is a big thing. A couple mental health issue questions out there. Iraq warplanes mistakenly bombed Baghdad. That's a big story out there. You're not seeing a lot of it. The Troika swindle, how the Greeks actually owe nothing. And this is a third party that went through everything and said, look, the Greek people don't owe this debt. The Greeks don't owe this debt. Why are they being forced to repay it? It's another interesting story about how the bankers are trying to swindle them out of their money. Doctors prescribing amphetamines, I can't even pronounce it, for binge eating. Jesus Christ, a pill for everything. Stop it. All right, Bitcoin, some other stuff. So let's go ahead and get you back on the single screen. And I'm not happy with this whole setup. How they changed the way Wirecast functions and it sets up. The other thing too is I noticed this, and I'll go back and I'll look at some of the videos and see what I can do differently. And I noticed that when I look straight ahead at the computer, and I don't look up, which the camera is right there. So a lot of times it looks like I'm looking like this down, but I'm actually think I'm looking at the camera, but I need to be looking up like that. It just seems awkward for me to look up like that. So let's go ahead and cover some of the stories, some of the documentation I have up here. And the first one that I wanted to talk about is, no, I already covered that. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about ISIS. And if you watched yesterday's show, I talked about an article that I wanted to read. I ended up reading it. It was pretty interesting. I thought I would just cover it. It was an article from the Daily Beast, and it's called "The Woman Who Secretly Keep ISIS Running." and it talked about this individual that they captured, and I'm going to look at her name, Saif, and I'll just refer to her as Saif for this conversation. And they captured this ISIS bride, and she basically has given them a ton of information into the inner workings of the women's network in ISIS and what they're responsible for, from recruiting to spying, enforcing the sexual slavery and all that stuff, just so that this caliphate can continue on. And I guess that's one of the biggest things that brings a lot of these fighters into the caliphate is the promise of a wife, a bride, which I didn't realize. So you got the U.S. military campaign. They were out there and they conducted a bunch of attacks, and they killed this one individual. Where is his name in here? Abu Sayyaf, obviously, which is why we got Sayyaf, and they captured his wife. And so they went through, they engaged hand-to-hand combat, they killed this guy, they got $2 million, tons of computer stuff, and they thought, hey, we have just a treasure trove of information. We're going to be able to find out all kinds of information about ISIS. But what they're finding is this lady has a lot more information. And that's basically because she was married to this higher up, and she's given a rare insight as to how they ran their financial operations, their tactical operations, and how women play a commanding role within ISIS, within their networks, within controlling the women fighters and operatives. There's a hierarchy of ISIS women, and they're ranked based upon their husband's rankings. The higher the ISIS org chart their husband is, the more they know about the terror group's operations, the more they involved there. Now, they're not involved in regards to knowing the day-to-day operations and how everything runs, but in how the women are served, making sure that ISIS male members are given brides, and when brides come in, they put them through a rigorous process to see that they are where they belong and what kind of asset they are to the organization. There's women that will serve as sexual slaves, as wives to the men out there. Also, women serving the role of religious police, going around and making sure that other women are following strict religious and social standards. They're the ones that come up and say, you are wrong. I put on a video once, one of my shows a few months ago, and it showed a lady, elderly lady, I say in her 40s, I'm elderly, I guess then, and she was out in the street begging for her life, and a bunch of men were around her, basically going off on her in Arabic. Next thing I know, they have her bend down, she's praying and asking for forgiveness, and the problem was that she did something that they didn't like on the street. I'm not sure what it was because I couldn't understand the language. She was dressed with the burqa and everything, so I didn't think it was revealing too much of herself. Perhaps she didn't address a man, or maybe she looked at a man. I don't know what it was. So she's down, she's begging for forgiveness, and she's praying to Allah as the ISIS guy standing over her wanted. Next thing you know, they chop her head off right there in the street. People are filming when the head gets chopped off and it rolls out in the street. They're all yelling, Lapa, Allah Lakyar, and all that stuff. And it was just gruesome. Not sure why I played it on here, and it was, I think, to put a lot of emphasis on how they operate, the mentality of these people. So anyways, many people, they join the caliphate because they get the promise of a bride. They'll fight on the front lines. They have a woman at home that serves their every purpose in the caliphate. Primarily, their goal, the women are there to recruit, reward, retain, sex slave, cook, and do all that stuff. But it was an interesting read if you had a chance to read it. And that all falls in line with that whole Sharia law thing where this Italian lady says, hey, political we need to bring Sharia law into the system, into the political system, accept it. Just does not make sense, especially when you see a lot of what's happening over here with ISIS and how they control the cities that they've taken over and how they run them. It's pretty horrific. We've all seen the videos. We've all read the stories. All right, now the next thing I wanted to talk about and it may be introducing it to you. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it, Agenda 21. Maybe you're not sure what Agenda 21 is. This article that came out, and it basically covered how Agenda 21 has changed. It's evolved. A lot of people associate Agenda 21 with conspiracy theories, with a negative connotation behind it. So now they're calling it different things. And in this one particular area, they called it a wilderness corridor. And they suspect that it's going to go by different names. And essentially what Agenda 21 is the government. The government, and this is documented. This isn't books. This isn't some conspiracy guy out there talking. This is actually documented actions that the government wants to take. Okay? So basically, the government fears those that live in the rural areas. They can't control them. And not that there's anything wrong with these people. And in my mind, a lot of these people are good people. It's just that their demographics that the government often struggles to contend with are those people in the rural areas. You know, they're resourceful. They can take care of themselves. They can hunt. They can garden. They have chickens. They have goats. They have cows. You have no choice but to take care of yourself. You don't need those government services, and a lot of times those government services are too far away. So the government's not in there telling you what you can do. And you contrast that with a lot of us urban dwellers, and although I live in a small town of Venice, I'm not in New York City, I am an urban dweller. The density of the city makes it easier to control the population. You know, on the countryside, you might have one cop for 30 miles. Here, the city of Venice, we probably have 50 cops in this little 5-6 mile area. Easier to control. The cost to exert the control over the masses is less if you can round them all up in a city center versus out in the countryside. So what the goal is to move them from the countryside into the cities. They can rest there easy, knowing that they got a watchful eye in these controlled urban centers. Agenda 21. So this this author with the dailyherb.com stumbled upon an article that was written in 1998. Basically, in the article, it's called the Libby County Commissioner, Rita Windham, informed that she and other commissioners were approached by the Montana Fish and Wildlife and Parks, FWP, by Darlene Edge. And the proposal was to drive urban or rural residents out of the countryside and into the cities. When they responded with horror, the guy said, look, that's the way it is. We got to force them to move. Why don't you work with us instead of against us? Scary, isn't it? And it's hard to believe that this goes on, but it does, folks. You know, as you can see, with dealing with the lower-ranking government officials, they try to conceal their plans. They try to sell the people on it. One of the best ways to do this is environmentalism. And I don't think this is always the case, because I can tell you, here locally, we have an area called the Woods. I was active because I don't like all the development going on. So I was active in saying, no, let's not do this development. My philosophy, my thought pattern was not Agenda 21, the urbanization. Far from that. I'd love it to be more rural. But that's what a lot of people are doing. They're using the guise of environmentalism to move people urban, saying we can't build out here, you got to move more urban, more into the town. You got that, working under that guise. And this whole Agenda 21, which is a UN plan to depopulate rural areas in America and move the people into cities, is being changed to the name to Wilderness Corridor. Government's plan to relocate people, rural residents. What do you think of that? And like I said, different areas, different regions will have different labels out there. But if you live in a rural area, you need to pay attention to some of the policies that are being carried out by local agencies. And actually, that whole Woods situation that I just mentioned here, now that I think about it, could be an Agenda 21. The city of Venice, I'd almost have to say aggressively, they went through the bells and whistles and made it look like they were having a 3-day meeting and looked like they were listening to the people that were concerned about this urban growth, this urban sprawl that was heading out their way. But in reality, they didn't. One of the council members at the last day of the meeting had a typed out note. Somebody asked for those notes, and he says, "Oh no, they're all my handwritten personal stuff, and it's not open to freedom of information." Pat Wyman, she actually watches this show. Pat called him out and said, "No, I'd like this stuff," and he said, "No, they're all personal notes." The attorney for the city came out and said, "Oh no, it's all personal notes." But yet, one of the council members who I'm really starting to like is Deborah Anderson, sitting next to him, said, "No, they weren't. He had it typed up." And anybody that watched it, which the council meetings, I tend to sit in my home office because I got to work, and I'll watch it and listen to it on the computer. I'm not one that actually goes in there. And then I reported on my local blog. And I could tell, I was sitting there watching. It was late at night, like 8:45 or something like that. And he was reading a prepared statement. But back to that whole Agenda 21, Wilderness Corridor. That is the idea of what happened there. Expand the urban area. Make it all urban. Round everybody up. Take away from the rural life that they had. They changed the zoning from 5 to 1 acre. And that was an Agenda 21. And I didn't even notice it. And I'm pretty involved. Amazing. Agenda 21 to work here in Venice. You know, like I said, preserving the environment is good. And what the people were trying to do there, they were trying to preserve the environment. I was trying to preserve the environment. And I guess without even realizing it, I was trying to prevent Agenda 21 from being carried forth. But it shows you, I'm pretty involved, I'm pretty active, and yet I still missed it, folks. I still missed what they were up to here. Amazing. All right, we're going to go to a quick a break, and what you'll see is a picture of me and some music on there. That just allows me to set up without you sitting here watching me fumble through stuff as I pull up documents. A lot of radio shows, like the one I watch every day, Alex Jones, he sits there and he'll print it all up on his desk and he'll highlight what he has. I don't have the money to do that because I haven't made a dime off this show, so what I'll actually do is I highlight documents and I'll pull up. Sometimes, like that Agenda 21, I actually had 4 articles sitting up there. And I'll look at them, bounce back and forth. You might see me moving around. Well, I don't think you can see my hand on here, but I'll bounce back and forth between the different documents, pulling information, because I want to make sure it's as factual as I can be. And that's how we do it. So, give me a quick second. We'll set up for the next segment. Okay, I'm back. I was going to first go into the bases in Somalia and talk on those a little bit, but I think what I'm going to do is stick with that whole Greece thing. I know I've been beating the Greece thing to death for the last 3 days, but there has been some new issues that have come to the forefront that I just wanted to touch on, because I think it's interesting in how these bankers, primarily Germany and France, are trying to get this money from the Greece people, money of which they've never seen, never used, never signed on to. And the same can be said about America and other countries. And it amazes me the great lengths that the IMF, the EU, and I forget the third entity, they call it the Troika or something like that, are going through to get this money so that the bankers are paid off and the people suffer. Because that's essentially what's happening. First, I wanted to talk about Victoria Nuland, though, because she went there to Greece to see what she could do. Now, who is she? If you watch my show, you know who she is. This is a lady Now, everything I'm going to cover is based upon a phone conversation that was tapped. This idiot had a phone conversation on a non-secure line. She's the assistant ambassador over there in Europe or something like that. And she had a conversation, and on the conversation, she was taped discussing, the funneling of about $5 million to the resistance in the Ukraine for a coup. In addition to, they were talking about the puppet government they would put in place, which is there now, a neo-Nazi group, headed off by a former executive higher up with the IMF. She's now in Greece. Now, what happened over in Ukraine? Just a real quick background. Most of you guys that watch this or are into alternative know this, but many of you may not. Essentially, what happened is, Ukraine had a vote. It was a pro-Russian government. And the vote was to basically, on some agreement with Europe to get closer ties here, the pro-Russian government said, you know what, thanks, but no thanks, we're not interested. We're not going to take it. After that, the resistance started showing up. Newland, the U.S., started funneling money to the resistance. You would see major media a lot of times showing the resistance fighters getting shot, but what they weren't showing is how the resistance fighters were shooting back and doing things like that too. So, they take over, the government folds, they take off to Russia, and you get this new government, neo-Nazi government, headed by the IMF, puppet government, the same exact government that Newland said she wanted in place, coincidentally. Then, next thing you know, they're moving more towards Europe, which is what the U.S. wanted. Next thing you know, NATO's moving soldiers on the border with Russia. Next thing you know, Cold War started all over, and I could go into more detail on all that. I've covered it extensively. Got the similar situation over here in Greece. The U.S. cannot, and the EU cannot accept that vote. The vote that just went through with the EU. They can't accept it. Okay? United States and Germany, they're prepared to go in there and engineer a coup in Greece because they want the country to keep operating as a strategic asset to NATO. It's on the southeast flank of Europe there. And they don't want this ally to start relying on what is perceived to be the enemy, Russia. Because Russia's now coming in and saying, hey, look, we're sorry the EU is trying to bill you, trying to get all this money from you that they don't deserve, that you're not responsible for paying back. We're sorry for all that. Let us help you. Why? Because then they're right there on the eastern, they're coming into Europe. They're telling U.S., Germany, and everyone, NATO, hey, you guys want to come into our back door? We're going to come into your back door. They got a strategic naval port there that the U.S. used to have. What's it called? I think it's in this article right here. I don't see it off right hand. I think it's later down. I'll see if I can find it. But essentially, the Newland and the United States, they came in and they tried working. They had meetings back in, I think it was March, with the Greek military. And it's the same military guy that was trying to foment a coup earlier in the previous. And his name is... I should have highlighted this stuff a little bit better. I don't see it here. Having a bad day on my documentation. It might have been another article that I didn't pull up. But anyways, they're in there and they're trying to work. They met with this guy that was part of a former coup attempt and saying, hey, we don't know what was discussed, but it's a little disconcerting, especially when you see what Newland's involvement was in the UK or in the Ukraine. And intervention in Greece isn't new with the United States. Back in 87, 89, the U.S. made a concerted effort to overthrow the government of back then Prime Minister Papandreou. Prior to that, this in 67, the Greek military installed a regime of colonels following a coup d'etat. And the Greek military was under the control of the CIA following the Greece entrance into NATO back in 52. So it's not something that's new, and it's not something that's unbelievable. Now, why would the U.S. want this? Why would Greece want this? We mentioned the whole Russian thing. They don't want Russians over there on the European border, right there in the Mediterranean, in a prior port. It's just something that the United States cannot accept. They also want to pay back their bankers. They need the bankers to get their money back. Money that is not owed. You got the Troika, and they're in there, and they're trying to swindle these guys. They're in there saying, hey, you owe us this money. But in reality, what happened is, in June, the Greek Truth Committee on public debt, they met, they went through everything. And what they did is they came to the conclusion that the Greece should not pay this debt because it was illegal, illegitimate, and odious. The establishment media has not talked about it. They haven't. They basically have hidden. They're hiding the debt. They're not out there and publicizing the fact that it is not owed. Okay. The establishment media has hidden from view the facts, which is not surprising. They do this all the time. They do it all the time. But that's why the Greek government is refusing to accept these harsh conditions to pay it back. And I forget what the number is. It was something like 2 or 3% of the millions and trillions of dollars that are owed is truly owed back. But that's it. A large portion of the debt, about, I don't know, I think it's somewhere around 250 billion, 245 billion euros, was fraudulently dumped on this country. And it was dumped on them, and guess what? A bank bailout back in 2010, 2012, just like it happened here in the United States. Just like that. And the Greek debt only exists on the basis of Wall Street practice for unpayable debt. You know, known as extend and pretend. They've changed the repayment back, the terms and policies. It's like they're creating the game as they go along. It's a swindle, and it's similar to what the TARP was. And we all remember TARP. And essentially what's happening in Greece is what happened in the United States with TARP. American people, we bailed out the banks. It was that whole subprime fiasco. By the Federal Reserve, the non-Federal Reserve, owned by 6 international bankers. They wanted to print $4 trillion of new money to cover gambling debts of the financial class. And we, the taxpayers, had to cover it. So during the course of buying all this toxic mortgage securities and derivatives from the United States, the European banks engaged in their own subprime scam. And they made these unpayable loans to Greece, Ireland, Portugal, and Hungary. The same thing happened to Iceland a few years ago, but Iceland called them out and said, look, we went through this. Maybe 10% of this debt is ours. We're not paying it. So they tried cutting off the money to the banks, just like what's happening in Greece now. The Greece government's not the one shutting the banks down. It's the EU cutting out their liquidity. And most of this loan money did not stay in Greece. More than 90% went directly and immediately to the Deutsche Bank, HSBC, JP Morgan, all those banksters, all those sharks out there. Just a small amount. The crumblings stayed in Greece. And that's why the people of Greece are saying, no, we're not going to take it anymore. That's why the EU, a lot of people are worried that they won't hold together. It's like a big mafia, a big scam. Same with this governing board, this Troika. And it's not being given out there. The information is not making it out there to the masses. But we got our own problem here with Puerto Rico, and I've covered it. They're running huge deficits since 73. Borrowing. So the governor over there, what's his name? Padilla. He admitted that they have $73 billion in debt. That's not payable. He said, in short, we're not going to be able to pay you back. It's not about politics. It's about math. We don't have the money to pay you back. Some of them are just some of the policies that the U.S. makes them go through. Like, one of the most ridiculous things that's killing businesses there is they wanted to set a minimum wage equal to the United States, which is ridiculous. That's like going to Calabria, where my sister gets €2 an hour, and saying, no, we want you to pay them $10 an hour. What are you going to do to the economy, folks? That's why I sit here in amazement when people say, no, $7.50, $8 is not enough. We want you to pay them $15 an hour. It's an economy killer. LA just passed it. We're going to see what happens there. So essentially, there's so many creditors out there. Way too many for the kind of debt that Puerto Rico needs. And they can't file Chapter 9 because they're a whole commonwealth. Which is why a lot of people are saying, hey, when they did their vote, we don't want to be part of the commonwealth. We don't want this. They raised their sales tax. It was already 7.5%. They raised it to 11%. Unemployment, twice the rate of the United States. The poorer than Mississippi, the poorest of all of our 50 states. They barely generate $100 billion a year in their economy. The credit rating sucks. Their publicly owned electric utility just barely made $400 million payment in debt last month. These are all factual numbers that I'm picking up off this report. White House says tough luck. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to help you out. But even if they did help them out, I don't know if that would solve Puerto Rico's problems. It wouldn't cure their ails. They need the same remedy that is sadly missing in the conversation with the Greek referendum that just took place. They need to unleash the free market. And that can only happen if the politicians get out of the way. You got to reduce the personal and corporate income taxes. Eliminate sales taxes. Get rid of that value-added tax concept. Be more like Singapore. Instead, the conversation is directed to what can the government do, what the government should do, what the government might do. Government is the problem. It's not the solution, it's the problem. Obamacare, problem. Government is not the solution, folks. And what they're going to see is that they're going to be in a death spiral just like Greece because their reliance upon government. The United States. All right. Let's take a quick break. I'll be right back. All right, I got about 14 minutes. I was going to talk about boots on the ground in Somalia. Let's talk about the retirement account. All right. And this is basically Americans with retirement accounts and how you need to be aware that what's happening in China doesn't happen here. And why this might be an issue is because America is helping China in the programs that they're currently instituting, which are killing and taking away the retirement assets, not allowing people to sell, which is just decimating their retirement accounts. And do we want that here? And there's already been action taken because the government thinks they can manage your money better than you can manage your money. They've been, the government, elements within the government have worked feverishly. They want to take control of your retirement assets. They want all your money. Capital controls. Get rid of cash. And the logic is that the government can manage your finances better than you can. You do not know what you're doing. They've already began to have workers invest earnings directly into government-managed funds. I hope you're not doing. I'm not doing that. Well, I guess I am if I have my. No, because you get Social Security. Yeah, that's an entitlement when you get older. I'll probably be working until I die, though. But their goal here is to seize assets outright and put them under central control. Socialized, centrally managed, centrally owned. It'll be like Obamacare, centralized healthcare. I know, doesn't that sound great? A lot of you are saying that's impossible. It never happened in the land of free. Obamacare. We keep reflecting back to that. Passage of Obamacare. And that's clear evidence that they can do what they will, what they want. So what's happening over in China? Their stock market, if you don't know it, if you watch this show, you know it's in the midst of a massive collapse right now. They've tried everything to halt the crash, but they can't. It's about down about 25%. And that's just this month. So what they've decided is we're going to ban people from selling. So they're taking these stocks, which are bloated, and they're starting to disintegrate right before your eyes because they're not allowing people to sell them. So you got these retirement fund managers that are sitting there, and they may have a fund that they bought at $15 a share. It's down to $5 a share, but you cannot sell it because the Chinese government will not allow it. They can buy all they want, but they cannot sell it. So these people that want to retirement are watching their money, their retirement go away. And as we all know, the Chinese government, Chinese economy is heavily intertwined with the United States economy. And although there's nothing suggesting this, but you got to think that the U.S. government is aware of what Chinese are doing, because they're more than likely advised them and said, this is what we need to do to save the global economy. And if your pensioner or retirement account is here in the United States, you've got to be concerned, and this should be a wake-up call. And the fact is that the government will do stop at nothing to try to grab your money, just like you're seeing over in Greece. They're trying. The government has no option in Greece. The EU's in there taking all this money. They want to make sure their banks are paid. Seizing, forfeiture of retirement asset funds. It's one of the final errors that the government will take. Think about it, millions of dollars out there. When the inevitable panic that we're seeing over in Greece makes its way over here, the government will enact emergency measures that may include everything from withdrawal limits at ATMs to seizing money out of personal bank accounts to taking control of retirement assets to getting rid of cash. You got to go to digital currency because think about it, they don't like the fact that we have cash in our hands. When you go to the bank and you try to take out $3,000, they want to know why, where it's going, and question you. Because when you have cash, they can't control you. They don't like you buying gold. They don't like you buying silver. Are you prepared? And I push it over and over again. Are you prepared? Do you have cash reserves? Do you have gold? Do you have food? Do you have water? Do you have medicine? They're coming for your money. They're coming for your cash. They want to digitalize currency. What? And I know it sounds strange, but think about it, folks. They can control you so much better. And it goes along with that whole Agenda 21 where the government wants to control you. And I know you think that's Big Brother conspiracy theory. But what you need to do is look at the crumbles, the pieces that you see laying around. Does it add up? What's it add up to? What's happening around you? You don't think the United States is playing any role whatsoever in what's happening to Greece? What's happening in Greece can happen here. What the European Union is doing to Greece, America could do to Puerto Rico. America could do to Mississippi. America could do to Florida. The federal government, I should say. And this should be concerning to all of us. You know, what if these idiots that are over there provoking Russia, the big bear, get us into World War III? Do you know how catastrophic that would be? Are you prepared? Nuclear bombs going off all over the place? You know, it could never happen. Well, did we expect Japan to bomb Pearl Harbor and drive us into World War II? No, we were all sitting here thinking life is good during World War II. Next thing you know, Pearl Harbor blown up. Next day you know, we're sending people off to die in World War II against Hitler. Against Japan. Now, the whole Hitler thing was Hitler was allied with Japan. He immediately declared war on us, so we declared war back. We obviously went after Japan. We went into Germany. I have my own thoughts on that. I think the United States government wanted to do that. I think we knew about the Japanese coming. I don't know how we couldn't have known about it. But, you know, that's my whole conspiracy line of thought. I'm going to go ahead and cut the show short today. Again, I wasn't able to prepare. I wasn't able to prepare yesterday or today. I've been real busy with my company, medical consulting, which actually brings in the food, pays the bills. And that's more important than... this is important. I love getting the communication out. I love getting the message out. But obviously, food my family is more important, and I have to focus on that. It looks like, though, for the next couple of days, not as much work, so we should be back on our feet again. And hopefully bring more substance to the show. All right, so that's it. The uncensoredreport.com. Check it out for the latest news, or the Scoop nationalnews.com. Also, you can go to the Uncensored Report for previous interviews. I have some great interviews on there. I haven't interviewed anyone lately. I get a lot of requests. I just don't have the time. Rogue rants, I used to put them out. They were 5 minutes long. Every once in a while, I will on the issue. I'll rant, and then I'll play it on the show. Those were on there, and previous shows. From the rate when I did a radio show to when I was doing this video/TV show. So check them out and drop me a line. Got any questions? Drop me a line. For Francesco Abbruzzino, I will see you later. Have a great day.